So I want to talk about two tragedies that occurred this past week, one in Brooklyn and one in my hometown of Philadelphia. Two apartment fires took place. In the Brooklyn one, there were, in both buildings, there were several issues about fire safety equipment. In the Brooklyn building, there were fire safety doors that did not close properly. And just for those of you who don't know, a fire safety door is a door that can be propped open, like with a magnet. But when there's a fire, the door is weighted so that it will close automatically, and the magnet stops working. So essentially, this allows the door to close automatically without anyone being involved. What these doors, now they don't lock. What these doors are meant to do is to prevent the fire from spreading for a certain amount of time, to allow people on the other side to get to safety. Essentially, there to buy time. Additionally, in both buildings, there were complaints that the fire alarms did not go off. In the Philadelphia case, for example, people died from smoke inhalation because they just didn't know that there was a fire going. However, both buildings had been fairly recently inspected, and this presents a large issue. One, because it obviously looks like there's some malfeasance or some negligence on the part of the municipalities. But what's interesting is in the Brooklyn case, the building was public. They're both public housing, but the public housing building was actually being run by a private corporation. And as I've said on the show over and over again, a corporation only has one job, which is to make more money for the people who own it. And when you're running public housing, there is really only one way that you can make money. Now, if you're a landlord, you can raise rents, but for public housing, you can't really raise rents. A lot of the times, the rents are set by the municipality. So the only other way to make money, because the rent coming in or the contract money coming in doesn't change, is to simply reduce costs. Now, you can reduce costs by having fewer people on staff, or you can reduce costs by just doing the absolute bare minimum to pass your inspections and to keep your contract going, right? And this is a terrible incentive for, I mean, literally anything, but especially public housing, where we're expecting this service to provide housing, which should be a fundamental right, by the way, to those people who can't otherwise afford it. And it kind of exposes, both of these examples kind of expose, how the poor are not vilified, but are considered of low moral worth. So these units just have to function at the bare minimum level. And as long as they do that, we don't pay a lot of mind to it until these tragedies come up. Now, I really hope that the individuals who are, the survivors of these families who lost people in these fires are able to get some level of recompense, of compensation. Obviously, it won't bring their family member back, but we need to start thinking about public housing as something that should be, available for anyone who needs it, but also just be good quality housing. There's no reason that a service for the poor should be any less than a service for anyone else. And I think part of it is because, and especially in America, and I would be curious to hear if this is the case in other countries, we essentially take your economic worth and we equate it with your moral worth and say, not explicitly, but if you're poor, whatever, you can get the absolute bare minimum for something and it's fine. But we revere rich people and services for the rich people, like, oh, if you're doing this for a rich person, then, oh, you got to make sure it's right, or this and that and the other thing, because those people have power, right? And by the way, in a capitalist system, that is how power works, right? So if you have no money, you have no power. If you have lots of money, you have lots of power, and everyone in between, right? So really, we need to think about these services as being kind of collective endeavors. And when I'm going back a bunch of episodes to when friend of the show Lauren Ashcraft was on, we talked about, if you had an issue, wouldn't you want services? Wouldn't you want your government to be there for you, right? And we should think about public housing the same way. Public housing should be hey, if you need it, it's there for you, and it's good, it's decent quality housing. You don't have to live in squalor, you don't have to live in bad circumstances. Obviously, the goal should be to get people out of public housing as soon as is reasonable for them, but there shouldn't be pressure to get them out, right? And there shouldn't really be rents, it should be free. Um, but we should also, we should also have opportunities to create living situations that make it okay if you fall on hard times, right? Sure, we don't want people to be there for a long time, but if you get stuck there, and some people, look, no one's poor on purpose, okay? No one lives in destitution because they want to, especially in a system like this one where everything is money based, right? Everything revolves around money, your worth, seemingly, um, and all these other things too. It's very frustrating that the system that's supposed to support you if you fall on hard times, because the system is vicious, they aren't good. So there's almost like an added level of fear there that, hey, if you do fall on hard times, well, there's really bad stuff coming out there for you. So you better make sure that you keep your head up. But it's not always possible for people, right? There's poverty is often chronic or cyclical. So we need to make sure that the services that we put out there for people who do fall on hard times or are constantly on hard times are safe. And by the way, have you ever seen something like this happen in a unit of condos that are expensive, or in a nice luxury apartment building? No, of course not, because the people there know that if something goes wrong, there are people with power on the other end of it. Whereas we don't grant that benefit. We don't grant the humanity, the dignity to people who are poor. So when these tragedies happen, they always happen in places where there's poverty, because we just, as a society, we just don't care. And we need to care. These are people just like you and me and everybody else watching this or not watching this. And one of the ways we can, effectuate this change is just to take these, absolutely unfortunate tragedies and advocate for the people who survived, right? Advocate for better housing for them. By the way, in the Philadelphia unit, I believe, the fire was caused by a space heater. So why do you need a space heater if the building's supposed to have heat, right? You only buy a space heater if you don't already have a way to heat yourself, right? You only buy an a window air conditioning unit, for example, if you don't have a way to keep cool. So that's what I'm saying. These buildings need to be equipped with these kind of basics. And by the way, last point here, as we move further and further into climate catastrophe, the seasons will get more extreme. People will need to be either cooler or warmer. People will buy more space heaters if they're living in situations where heat is not provided for them. I wanted to talk a little bit about products liability and things like that, but when I found out that the New York building was owned by a corporation, I took that I chose to take that angle instead. But the bottom line is we need to start treating people like people, and that includes making sure that our public housing is safe and comfortable and feels like home to the people who have to treat it as home for however long they have to treat it as home.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.